I gotta say, I really love what they've done with the presentation of Season 2 with these menus and the music and everything. And there's a real zen vibe to the whole thing that really calms you down. I really like it. I want to make something for you guys tonight, but I just had a very hard day after a pretty rough night last night, so I'm kind of tired. And it's that thing with Tekken, when you feel like shit, you tend to play like shit. So I thought maybe I'll do something a little bit different. And I found out that if you go to the character customization page and look at the different characters in this game, you can actually check out the different animations for the beginning of the match and when they win. And so I thought maybe we'll have a look around and see if there's anything fun or interesting we can say about what the characters are actually saying. And you know, all the different languages. You got to give the Tekken team props for actually hiring voice actors from all over the world to speak all these different languages and make it sound so much more organic than in a game like, you know, Soul Calibur, where everybody's clearly speaking lines written in Japanese and then translated directly unedited to English, and that's where you get the sort of awkward speaking stuff that you have in that game. But I think we're just gonna jump in here with a couple of different characters who I happen to know, you know, a little bit about. I happen to know a little bit about the language that they speak. Maybe we should start with Miguel because he's, you know, a character that I guess, a little bit known for on this channel. We can't look at the raid charts in this mode, which is sad. So I'm just gonna say that I think Miguel's raid chart is amazing. I think it's the best raid chart in the game, and I love the way he speaks. When it activates, he goes, I think it's que pesado, which is like what heaviness, what weight. If you watched the One Piece anime or you read the manga, you'll know that I think Crocodile, the sand guy, he had a move called Desert Pesado, where he like compressed sand into like a ball and shot it away, which I thought was really cool. And then he goes, parece que estás a punto de perder. It's like, parece, it's like it seems, it would seem as though you are at the point of losing. So it looks like you're about to lose, and then he smashes you over the head and goes, apártate de mi vista, which is like, apártate, you know, part yourself de mi vista, from my sight. So it's like, get out of my sight. It's very aggressive and it fits the personality of this character beautifully. So I gotta say, I really like what they did there. But let's have a look at these options that we have here in the menu screen. So it's just like option 1 through 4. Let's just look through them and see what he says. That's a long word at the beginning. Desgraciadamente. Oh, desgraciadamente para ti, hoy tengo un mal día. Tengo, you know, to have. When you're talking about yourself, it's tengo. When it's you're talking about you, you know, it's tenéis, or tienes, sorry, you know, cuántos años tienes, and then tenemos and tenéis. This is the difficult thing about Spanish, where you have to constantly conjugate the verbs differently depending on if you're talking about, you know, a group of people, yourself, a third person, a second person, and so on. But he's basically saying, unlucky for you, I'm having a bad day. So again, he's very threatening, and I love that about him. The thing I love about Miguel is they've given him this air of violence. He's scary, you know, he's a guy you don't want to run into in an alley. He has a short temper, but then he's also, you know, motivated by pretty pure motives, I guess. So he's like a really cool character, and it comes across in his animations, the way he speaks, the attacks that he does, and everything else. Let's look at number 2 here. Alright, so that's the one where he just eats an apple. It's pretty cool. He doesn't say anything. It would be really nice if the apple was still on the ground during the match. I really love that. But yeah, that one's pretty cool. Sigue así. Oh yeah, like continue on this path is a pretty bad translation, but like keep going like this. What does he say? Let's listen to it one more time. Sigue así. Y te acabarán matando. Matando, to kill, to murder. If you've played Resident Evil 4, you know they're constantly going, matarlo, te voy a matar. You know, I'm gonna kill you, kill him, kill him. So he's basically saying, keep going like this, and you're gonna end up killed. And I think the interesting thing about it is he's not saying you're gonna end up dead. He's saying you're gonna end up murdered. So it's a vaguely, a sort of thinly veiled threat. He's not saying you're gonna, if you keep on fucking around, you're gonna get yourself murdered by somebody, probably Miguel. So it's not that you're gonna be in an accident and die. It's that you're gonna get murdered. So it's again, it's very violent, and I love it. Let's have a look at the last one. Yeah, that's the classic one. That's the one that blew my mind the first time I saw it, that he actually punches the cameraman. It's like a fourth wall break. There's an actual cameraman on the stage, but he just goes, que miras? And miras, it's the same thing, it's conjugated for you. So what are you looking at? What do you see? But in this context, what are you looking at? And then he smashes you over the head. So really cool. I love Miguel, and I love the way he sounds in this game. He used to go, te vas de gratis in the older games, and my Spanish friends, when they heard that, they laughed their asses off, because that's something that they say when they shit talk one another. I guess we should look at some Japanese speaking characters. Maybe we'll just go. Asuka's pretty interesting because she's supposed to be from Kansai, right? If you're into Japanese stuff, you know that in anime and things, there's usually a token character from the Kansai region who speaks a very thick, sort of exaggerated version of the accent that they have up there, called Kansai Ben. And Asuka is that character in this game, so let's see if I can understand what she's saying in Japanese. I don't like Kansai very much. I don't go there a whole lot, so if you're from the region, I'm very sorry about that, but let's have a listen. Chachata yaroka. Yeah, it's like she's suggesting that we get this over with or get started. And I think chachato is a way of saying sasato, which is just to get something done quickly and neatly. And I think that's just a regional version of that in Kansai, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe if you're better at Kansai than me, you could let me know. Tekagen irande. So tekagen, this is to pull your punches or to go easy on somebody, to not do, give it your all. And she's going irande. So if this was like a normal Japanese person, or not, that's a poor way of putting it. If this was a person who spoke with a sort of a typical Japanese accent and not Kansai, then they would go tekagen irimasen or iranai des. But that des, which means to be or is in Japanese, often becomes de or yade in Osaka. So they wouldn't go genki des, I'm well. They would go genki yade and stuff like that. But again, this is an exaggerated version. I've met plenty of people who actually do speak like this. They're not thought very well of in Japanese society. A lot of my Japanese friends are like, no, Kansai is not Japan. It's like its own protectorate in the middle of the country because they're so different. But yeah, that's that one. Let's look at the next one. Mikake daoshi yana. This is just to call something shoddy or crappy in Japanese. It's like she's basically saying you suck. So it's not very nice. And she's looking down on you, literally. Yeah, yurusu is to forgive in Japanese, but she's saying it can also mean to let somebody off, or to let somebody off the hook, or to stop doing something to somebody. Like if you're tickling somebody in Japan, it's a weird scenario, but they might go yurushite, and that doesn't mean that they want you to forgive them. It means that they want you to let them go and stop. So, and kongurai, she's just saying to this extent, to with this amount is basically what that means. So she's saying, I'm gonna let you off with this much. I'm not gonna keep on kicking your ass. This is your lesson for today. I'm gonna let you off with about this much of a beating, basically. And she's saying it in a very Osaka kind of way. Yurushitaru wa. Yeah, yurushitaru wa, that's probably something you would only say in Osaka. I don't really get that conjugation. Yurushite ageru wa, or yurushite ageru, would be like how a person outside of Kansai would probably say that. But that's Asuka. Yeah, she's the token Kansai character, and you probably know about these characters. They show up in so much Japanese media, and they always speak in a very distinct way. Let's get some proper Japanese and again with the old gentle lady Kazumi. She speaks a very. This is how you would expect kind of like an old lady to actually speak, but it's even. But in like an official sort of setting, she speaks a very formal kind of Japanese. So let's have a listen to it. It's kind of the opposite of Asuka in a way. Let's get this frame off. Kakugo wa yoroshii desu ka? Kakugo is a word that doesn't get very well translated a lot. I see it translated as resolve a lot of the time, which kind of works, I guess, but it's one of those awkward words that has a very specific and nuanced meaning in Japanese, but doesn't really have an equivalent in English. I would say that kakugo is closer to a willingness and a preparedness to accept the consequences of something about to happen. So, if you're about to get married or have a child or get into a fight with somebody who could potentially beat your ass to death, it's like, are you have you made up your mind about this being what you want to do? And that's probably a closer approximation of what kakugo means. And she goes yoroshii desu ka, which is it well, is it good? But she's basically saying in a very polite way, have you made your preparations? Are you sure you're ready to do this? Are you sure this is what you want to do? Which is another way of saying that you're actually taking a big risk fighting her, because she's obviously powerful and strong and might hurt you. So she's saying like, are you ready to to go at it, kind of thing. Shigata arimasen ne. Shikata arimasen ne. This is something that you hear a lot. Normally you just go shouganai. Shouganai desu. Shigata ga nai, shigata ga arimasen ne. That's a longer, more polite way of saying the exact same thing. This gets translated to there's nothing to do about it, or something like that. But it's an expression that is pretty common in Asia. I know they say something similar in China. I'm sorry, because my Mandarin, I don't pronounce Chinese very well, but I know they go mei banfa, which is a similar expression. It basically means there's nothing you can do to help this situation. You just kind of have to accept the way things are. And it's very easy to use, but it's also something that annoys me a little bit about the Japanese mentality living here, because if you are in a situation that you're not happy with, say for example that you're being treated badly in the workplace, maybe you even feel that you're being discriminated against or something like that, a lot of Japanese people will often go shoganai. What are you going to do about it? This is just the way things are. And I think I'm from Northern Europe, and over there the mentality is the polar opposite. We despise people trying to have power over us, and there is usually something you can do about it. And I think at the very least, if you're not being treated fairly as a person, maybe you're in your right mind to be angry about that and not just go, there's nothing I can do here, because there might be. But that's just a little digression on the fact that I've gotten a little bit annoyed at people, I think, who overuse that expression in Japanese. Iko ne. Ko is a character that is used in the word kodomo, which means child, so it's like good child, but it's not really child. You can use it's the same thing as in onna no ko, otoko no ko. When you're talking about an animal or a young person, you can refer to them as a ko. So she's basically saying good boy to her giant ass pet tiger. All right, that one's a little bit more difficult. Ai irenai. Ai irenai. Ai irenai is an adjective that means it's a difficult meaning, but it's like contradictory or disharmonious or something that doesn't jive. And unmei is fate or destiny. So she's basically lamenting her fate here, which is, Kazumi is a person who had to get murdered by the person she loved, and they don't do a good job of telling her story in the story, because at least I didn't manage to understand whether or not she was a person who came from this clan who always wanted to kill Heihachi, and that was her plan all along, and then she fell in love with him, and then she turned into a demon, or if she, if it was something that awakened in her. It's not made clear whatsoever if she was actually a good person who loved her family, or whether or not she wanted to kill Heihachi from the start. But I think it's supposed to be that she was genuinely in love with him, and so she's a character who's had one of these very tragic, almost sort of Shakespearean fates, and so she's complaining about that in that one. I don't think I'm gonna risk trying to speak Portuguese in this one because it's probably just gonna get awkward. I'm not good at Portuguese, so I'm gonna leave Katarina and Eddie. I'm sorry about that. Maybe we should jump on. I mean, I can't speak Italian either, but let's have a look at Claudio, because I know a bit of Spanish. Maybe that can help me out. I know enough that I can understand Italian when it's spoken quite quickly. Even it's replying is a completely different thing though. Well, let's have a look at this and see what Claudio says. I've never actually listened all that close to what he talks about. Wow, okay. Non c'è spazio. Non c'è spazio per i dilettanti. So it's non c'è spazio. This is not a space. Spazio. This is not a place, basically. For dilettante. Dilettanti is like it's a plural. Of dilettante, I think, is a word in English which basically means layman. So when you're not doing something professionally, when you're an amateur at something. So he's saying like, this is no place for laymen. If you're not a demon or an exorcist or like some sort of super amazing martial arts genius, then you probably don't belong in the King of Iron Fist tournament, because this is going to get very dangerous. So I imagine him saying this to like Lucky Chloe, who's jumping around and dancing or something like that. Claudio, no, he's a martial artist, an exorcist, and basically a wizard. So he's fighting at a slightly different level than somebody like Lucky Chloe or something like that. Let's keep going. I hope if I'm mistranslating this, which is very possible, by the way, then I know I have Italian viewers. I have viewers in almost all the countries in the world. It's so much fun. So definitely weigh in. Let me know how shitty my pronunciation is and what I'm misunderstanding about what they're saying. Niente di più facile. Okay. This più, I think, is makes me think of, it's a digression again, but there's Più Bella Cosa, a song by a singer called Eros Ramazzotti, which was big when I was young, and that's the most beautiful thing. So più in this way, I think, means the most or more than something else. And he goes niente. And facile, if you think about something being facilitated, more easy to do, it's facile in French, of course, so it's like easy. So basically saying, this is a rough like direct translation, but this is nothing else or nothing more than easiness. So he's basically saying this is easy, but he's saying it in a way that doesn't translate well directly to English, but I'm guessing it's like, yeah, niente, nothing more or nothing less than easiness. So yeah, that's at least the way I interpret it. Okay, that's an easy one. Forse ho esagerato. Esagerato, exaggerate, obviously. Esagerato. Forse, force in English. So it's like exaggerating force. So I overdid it. I used too much force. I applied too much strength. And then he's holding his little, powerful magical arm, so he's like, I overdid it, and it's insinuating that, I guess, that he doesn't have complete control over his magical exorcism powers that he has in his arm. And that's a trope that you see a lot in Japanese media, people who have a demonic or powerful eye or arm or something like that, or that they have the power sealed within. So he's actually a kind of a cliche right here. Oh wow, yeah, that's that one. It's a really long one. We're gonna have to listen to that again. La luce, the light. Che la luce di Sirio, so the light of Sirio. Che la luce di Sirio disperda le tenebre. Okay, so it's like that the light of Sirio, which I guess is Sirius, the star, and then disperse, and then tenebre. There's a word in English, tenebrous, which is like something that is dark and kind of shadowy and evil. So I'm guessing it's like the may the light of Sirius disperse of the shadows. So that's kind of cool, kind of melodramatic. I kind of like the idea of some sort of order of Italian exorcist monks who worship the light of a single star. It's kind of cool. There's a lot of weird stuff like that in Italy. When I went to Rome, I went to like a mausoleum that was kept by a cult of monks, I think known as the Capuchins, and they basically had like an underground dungeon where everything, like including the walls and everything else, was made out of human bone, and they have chandeliers hanging in the ceiling made from human spines and everything. And there was like the skeleton, the actual real skeleton of a small child hanging from the ceiling, and it had like wings made out of the shoulder blades of an adult. It was so dark and weird, but obviously really interesting. So yeah, when you go deep Catholic, it's I guess pretty weird. It's yeah, Claudio could be like an evil character to some sort of Dan Brown novel, I guess. Hopefully, not quite as boring to read as a real Dan Brown novel. But that's just my opinion. I think he's very very dry. His novels write a lot like screenplays to me. Like it's a person who's watched too many films and is trying to write a film. And yeah, this is a digression. It's my taste in books isn't gonna be interesting right here. So let's move on. Like German is another language that I can understand if it's spoken to me. It's kind of closely related to my native language actually, but I don't think I want to try my hand at pronouncing it. So let's check out Lili. Who, oh, it looks like I have some sort of edgelord costume that I made for Lili back in the day. Let's not look at that one. And this is a fun thing about Lili because I remember looking her up, and she's supposed to be Monegasque actually. So she's not actually French. She's actually Monegasque, which is weird because she speaks what I think sounds like just like completely normal Parisian French. And I guess that makes sense. It would be cool if she spoke some sort of Ligurian accent, like she actually spoke Monegasque. I saw that was on a list of languages that might be going extinct a while ago, so there might not be that many people left to actually speak, Ligurian accents or Monegasque left in the world. And I think a sad thing about Monaco is that it's kind of like a tax haven, right? So there are so many wealthy people moving in. It's kind of like a Riviera where when you've become economically independent, you park your family in Monaco, you pay less tax for the rest of your life, and then you just keep on speaking your own language and not really trying to integrate at all with the local culture. So it's kind of funny to think that Lili is like the neglected daughter of some sort of French magnate who moved to Monaco to dodge taxes, and now she has to go and play and be in martial arts tournaments while he goes to Ice White Shut style parties, in a Venetian masquerade costume and sodomizes his neighbors and stuff. That's a pretty fun thought. But anyway, let's see if we can remember some of my shitty school French from way back when. My first girlfriend ever was a French girl. I haven't spoken to her in years, but that's probably the reason I learned how to speak it a little bit better. Tu crois sûrement pas. Crois, to think or to believe. Sûrement. Sûr, S-U-R. It's the same stem as sure in English. And you've probably heard of the French expression bien sûr, which just means of course or for sure. So, tu crois sûrement pas que tu peux me battre. Surely you don't believe that you can fight me. So she's looking down at you, saying like, surely you don't think that you're at, on my level. And this is another boring trope that you see a lot in Japanese media. The blonde European upper class woman who looks down at everybody, drinks a lot of tea. It's the exact same thing with Karen in Street Fighter, and these characters exist all over. And they're kind of like a boring, narrow view of what a Westerner is to to Japanese people. But then again, in Japanese media, they have a lot of these character tropes. You know, the character that is this, and then that archetype has a name, and they don't, they don't. They think that's normal. You know, they want to put in a character that has these traits, so they do that deliberately. Whereas I think we in the West would consider that pretty poor writing. You know, it's the definition of a character that is completely one-dimensional, and it's. I think it's kind of boring. I think it's a sort of character archetype. And this is the one where she doesn't speak. They just show off the amazing work they did with Lili's face in this game. I think Tekken 7 is the first game where they did a really good job with making the faces look, really beautiful. If you look at some of the older games, even though they had good graphics overall, the face and the lighting didn't really come together all that well. But in this game, they look amazing, obviously. Le moment de la victoire, j'adore. J'adore is, you've heard of je t'aime, I love you, or I like something. And adore, it's just a version of that is a little bit more intense. And le moment de la victoire, the moment of victory, the instant of victory. So she's just saying, I love the moment of victory. So it's a little triumphant thing. My voice is really coarse right now, so those French R's are very difficult to do. I was never good at pronouncing French, though. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about with that boring stereotype. C'est l'heure, it's the hour, literally. De monter de l'après-midi, adieu. So it's the hour, or it's time for my afternoon tea. Adieu, which is another way of saying goodbye in French. Adieu is a pretty dramatic way of saying goodbye. You would typically say something like, what would be like a normal casual way of saying goodbye in French. À tout à l'heure, or au revoir, obviously. But she goes adieu, which is kind of like farewell in English. It's something you might say to somebody who you're seeing for the last time. But yeah, c'est l'heure. C'est l'heure de monter de l'après-midi, adieu. Yeah, so it's time for my afternoon tea, goodbye. So yeah, pretty boring. But that's the French for you. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to try to do Arabic. If you're out there, one of my viewers from the Middle East, then salam alaikum to you. I can't pronounce Arabic at all. I could try to say that phrase that I just said more properly, but if I got it wrong and it sounded awkward, I would just feel bad about it. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to try my hand at Shaheen, but maybe some other day. Steve is interesting because he's supposed to be, a British character, and they've just again gone with the deepest kind of weird stereotype where he goes, "Hey, you want to try me, Gov?" Gov is like short for governor, which is another way of saying boss in English, and it's supposed to be, people just go straight to the Cockney rhyming slang and stuff when they're thinking about British English, but there are so many different accents just within the capital, London. I used to live in Britain, of course, and you can immediately tell when somebody's from the north, if you're dealing with a Scouser or a Mancunian, and then there's different languages, Welsh, Irish, Gaelic, and all the rest of it. So one thing that I always found interesting about the UK is that if you look at America, for example, you obviously have very regional accents. So you have people sound very different in the South than they do, for example, in the North, and so on. But in Britain, it's almost more about social class. People who are of the working class tend to live and eat in certain places and speak in certain ways, and then people who are upper class or try to be upper class speak in another way. And there's nothing as pathetic as somebody who's trying to sound like somebody who comes from a good air quotes family or has a lot of money in Britain, but you can tell that they're not actually pulling it off, they're actually faking it. And that's something that I think is pretty contemptible, but it is an interesting thing about British accents. Cockney, of course, and the rhyming slang is something that came about way back when to try and, get away with talking shop and saying secrets to one another, even though there might be somebody else in the room or the pub who was listening in. So you wouldn't say exactly what you meant. You would use something that rhymed with it, but that the person you were speaking to would understand anyway. So I think an old example that I know of is trouble and strife, and that was supposed to mean your wife. And I don't know if that's a real one, but yeah, that's the Cockney rhyming slang. Should we look at a couple of more Japanese characters? Let's look at Jin. Jin looks cool in this game. It's just a shame that him and his dad are the exact same character. I don't mean the way they play, obviously. I mean just the fact that, you know, we made this like angsty hard ass who just threatens people, and I don't feel like there are a lot of dimensions to their characters either, but maybe that's fine. Koi. He has a very throaty voice. It's almost a little bit nasal. Koi. It's just meireke, which is when you give somebody an order. It's the imperative form of the verb, is the grammatical term for it, which means come. So he's telling you to come. But it's kind of like saying, let's go, get over here, come on. He wants you to come to him in this context, but yeah, he's kind of like keen to get it over with. That's the sort of texture of what he's saying. Sorry, I jumped out of the menu accidentally. Chikara koso subete da. Chikara, one of the first kanji you will ever learn when you start learning kanji, looks exactly like the katakana for ka, and means power or strength. And koso is something that you use when you want to emphasize something in particular. So, kore koso, this in particular. And then subete da. Subete is everything. So, chikara koso subete da. Power is everything. Kore ga genjitsu da. Kore ga genjitsu da. Genjitsu is reality. It's written with the kanji for like real or actual and truth. So he's like, this is the real. But Genjitsu is reality, like the dimension of reality, the actual plane, as opposed to something imaginary, something conceptual, a dream. And he's saying this is reality. Kore, is it kore ga? Is that what he says? Kore ga Genjitsu da. Yeah, so he's saying, basically saying this is reality. This is what happens when you try and fuck with demons and stuff. The fact that I'm stronger than you is the reality of things. Matteiru. Matteiru. Matteite kudasai. Matteiru. But it's meireke. He's telling somebody to wait. I don't know what the concept of this one is. But he's saying, wait, but he's saying, be in a state of waiting. Be waiting is what he's saying. So, wait for me is probably the best translation of it, which is pretty cool. I guess, I don't know who he's talking to. Maybe his dead mom, maybe his dad who he wants to kill. Who knows? Let's have a look at Lars. Lars doesn't speak Swedish, even though he's like supposed to be a half Swedish, half Japanese character. I think it's kind of good that he doesn't speak Swedish, because that language I don't think lends itself to sounding threatening or badass. It's a beautiful language if you want to write and read poetry in it, It's very nice for that, but with stuff like this, I don't think. I think you're better off with Japanese or English. Sa hajimeyoka. Sa is a way of saying well then. There are many ways of saying that in Japanese. Ja, dewa, and so on. And hajimeyoka, shall we begin, is what he's saying. Nigeba wa nai, akirameru. So there's nowhere to run, give up. Which, if you were to say it in Swedish, would be something like Det finns ingenstans att fly, ge upp. Which, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could weigh in on that, but I don't think it sounds nearly as threatening as what he actually says. Ore o tomeru koto wa dekinai. Ore is me, myself, and it's a male way of saying that. There are ways of saying me or I in Japanese that are specifically used by males and not by females, or by men and not by women. And ore is one of them. And tomeru koto wa dekinai. I think that's a reference to, he had another one in Tekken Tag 2 where I think he went, ore o tomerareru ka? Tomerareru. That's a difficult word when you start to learn about kanoke, which is conjugation for possibilities. So you can't, or can you, are you able to, is it possible to, you will conjugate a verb to end with e, r, u. But if the verb already does, such as in tomeru, you have to add dareru, and it becomes sort of difficult to say ore o tomerareru ka. And here he goes, ore o tomeru koto wa dekinai, which is another way of saying you can't stop me. Tomeru koto wa dekinai is stopping me is not a thing that you can do. So it's another way of saying not being able to. Tomeru koto wa dekinai. So yeah. You can't stop me. It's a literal translation of what he says. Kochira wa katazuita. That's I've cleaned up. It's a word they use for arranging things and clean up your room. But he's basically reporting to somebody that what he was doing here, the situation that happened here, he's cleaned that up and now he's gonna move on. So you know, he was a squad leader of the Tekken force or whatever. So he's like reporting to a squad or whatever. Like, I'm good over here. I've cleaned up this mess, this situation that I was in. But it sort of insinuates that there's something going on somewhere else, and he has like people doing stuff for him around the area or whatever. Eliza is interesting, of course. She speaks English, but so there's not really something too interesting there. But you know, she doesn't go dark wave. She goes dark wave. She doesn't go, you know. She goes, I could use a drink. I think the reason they speak like that is, of course, because of Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi, who this great actor who played, I think, the first portrayal of Dracula in a speaking role in a movie. It's very, very long ago. One of those old black and white Universal movies. Lugosi was a Hungarian actor. And I remember looking this up a couple of years ago because he was from a place called Lugos, or Lugoj, which was in the Kingdom of Hungary back then, which I guess must be some sort of remnant of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, which in turn I guess is a remnant of the Holy Roman Empire. So that's pretty cool. But the town is currently, I think, in modern day Romania, and Romania is obviously where Transylvania is. So maybe the way Bela Lugosi spoke, his accent is the way somebody from Transylvania would speak English. You know, if they had a thick accent, which is pretty cool. He had so many great lines in that movie. I really loved it. It's a super iconic role. What does he say? I'm trying to remember something. I'm not going to be able to impersonate it, but he goes like, I have chartered a ship to take us to England. We will be leaving tomorrow evening. And he goes, that's the other one that gave me goosebumps the first time I saw it, when he goes, I never drink wine. And he's sort of implying that he doesn't drink wine, but he's going to drink your fucking blood later because he's a fucking savage. And that just sort of became the way vampires talk forever because he was so iconic in that role. And I guess that's why Eliza, you know, goes drink and not drink. Akuma's the ultimate fucking hard mode because he speaks Japanese like a person who was not very good at Japanese 1,000 years ago. He speaks like an ancient samurai, and I've talked about like the way he speaks to Japanese people here, and they're like, I don't even know, but maybe we'll have a look at him. Is there anything else we need to look at first? We should probably close this out with Akuma. I wish Dragunov would speak some Russian. There are a couple of characters in this game who like basically don't speak. Feng, I think he has one line. He goes Laiwa, and that's it. And it's sad because there are so many Chinese characters in the game, but nobody speaks Chinese. Feng has one line. Xiaoyu is a Chinese girl who grew up in Japan, so she only speaks Japanese. Lei speaks English because Jackie Chan speaks English. Law speaks English because Bruce Lee spoke English. Any other Chinese characters? But yeah, it's sad that there's like nobody who actually speaks Mandarin in the game, except for scattered words. And we have one Russian character and then two Russian robots. The Russian character and the first Russian robot Jack don't speak at all, and then Eliza obviously, or Eliza, sorry, speaks Japanese. So yeah, let's have a look at Akuma before I wrap this up. Maybe we should have a look at Noctis too, because he speaks like a teenager. So if you want to hear one character in this game who speaks like a real person, which is very rare when you look at Japanese games and anime and media and stuff, he's pretty much the only one. But he speaks like a little bit of a chimpira. But let's jump in here and see what we can do with Akuma. And I might not be able to understand this at all, but let's have a look. Yugi ni sugi no wa. Okay, so he goes Unura. Is that what he says? Unura no. Okay, so Unura is another way of saying you or your, and this is not a word that I've ever heard anybody use. And if you look at anime, people will say stuff like onushi and kisama, and there are many different ways of saying you, but these are like ancient weird ways that not even a samurai would probably use. But he goes Unura no bunado. Yeah, so Unura no bunado, your martial arts skill, your fighting skill, your bunado. Yugi ni sugi no. Is that what he says? Suginu. When you have nu like this at the end of a verb, it's another way of saying suginai, sugimasen. Suginai is like to not exceed, to not be more than. So he goes, your fighting skill does not exceed that of child's play, but he says it in a very compact and old way. Unura no bunado yugi ni suginu wa. Suginu. I think, but I might be wrong here. Oh, this one he doesn't speak, thank God. Look how scary he looks with his eyes here in the shadow. That's pretty cool. That's probably the best one, honestly. Me? What? I don't, like, I'm not sure. I have a feeling I know, but I'm not even gonna attempt that one. What does he say? Jaksha. Jaksha Shisubish. Okay, so this is one I can get because I can read the Japanese that's written in the subtitles down there. But he goes Jaksha. If you've watched anime, you know about Jakten, your weak spot, your weak point. So Jaku in this word means weak, and Sha, this or Mono, this kanji in here. Yuwai Mono would be like the normal way of saying this. You would say Yuwai Mono, Yuwai Hito. You wouldn't go Jaksha, but he goes Jaksha. So basically, weak people. Shisubeshi, which is another way kind of saying shinubeki, which is they deserve to or should die. So he's saying the weak should die. I think I've seen this translated as the weak should perish. So yeah, that's a pretty close translation of it, but it's like, yeah, death to the weak. Anything else? A lot of English speaking characters. Huarong. I don't know if I dare. My Korean is awful. Yobuseyo, 안녕하세요, 감사합니다, le. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Maybe we'll have a look at Noctis before we do that, though. This is a weird little video, and it's obviously not going to be interesting to those of you who just want to play the game. But maybe it'll be enjoyable to somebody to to listen to me sit here and just ramble and mess around. I just thought this was a cool little feature that I found today, so I wanted to have a look at it. Okay, Noctis only has 3. Okay, so I'm not gonna go easy on you, basically. I'm not gonna let up. And he doesn't go shinai or shimasen, he goes shinezo, which is a very boyish way of speaking. So they've made this character sound as though he's not only a young man, but a sort of defined, upstarty, slightly annoying man, and that's how they speak, you know. But I guess that's the character in the game. Maybe he has an arc in the Final Fantasy game where he's, you know, immature, and then he has to assume the role of a real prince or something eventually. I don't know. I've never played the game. That's pretty compact Japanese right there. Hitokari itoku ka. Itoku or yuttoku. Shitoku is to do something and leave it, but that's not really what it means. It's very difficult to explain. But he's hitokari is a hunt. Hitokari itoku ka. So I guess you do a lot of hunting in Final Fantasy, the game that he's from. You know, like side missions where you kill monsters and stuff. I don't know. So he's like, should we go? He's not saying it to somebody else. He's sort of saying it to himself, like maybe I should go for a hunt. So he's suggesting to himself that he go for a hunt, more or less. Kuso, ii toko datta no ni. Kuso is the closest you'll get to, you know, a dirty word like fuck or shit in Japanese. They don't really have swear words or dirty words the way we do. It's not a language that really allows for that, which can be, you know, I feel limiting. I have no problem whatsoever with it, you know, dirty language. I think it can be a very vibrant and very good way of expressing yourself. There are times where you want somebody to something to really get emphasized, and if you use profanity to do that, it just comes across in a way that is more deep, more nuanced than if you try to say it some other way. And I really don't buy this myth that people who rely on profanity have poor vocabulary. You know, and it's the same in all other languages. When you go, that was fucking beautiful. It has a pretty nice nuance to it. When a Spanish person goes, you know, es de puta madre, there's something to that as well. There's, I think, something poetic to profanity that I really like. But he goes, kuso, ii toko datta no ni, or something like that. Okay, so he was interrupted, and he was saying, "Oh, I was just at a good spot." So my guess is that he was sending, you know, emails, or as they say in Japan, but text messages to some girl, and he was chatting with a girl, and it was just about to get good, and then he had to fight somebody, or maybe he was playing some sort of mobile game, and he was about to get a high score or something like that. I mean, hyper casual mobile games are the only games where you still try and get a high score, right? And then at a good spot, toko. Tokoro, you know, a good place, a good spot. Even though this was a good spot, he got interrupted. So that's what that means. Have I missed anybody that I want to talk about? You know, a couple of characters that just grunt and moan, like Gigas and Yoshimitsu and Kuma and Jack. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it there. It's sad that Nina and Ada don't speak Irish. I think maybe they should have. I think that would have been cooler. But thank you for watching this video, despite the fact that it's probably, you know, very different and doesn't have anything to do with the gameplay of Tekken. But I want to give props to the people who made this game for actually getting native speakers and voice actors from all over the world to add a layer of vibrance and beauty to the game that I actually really appreciate. So that was just a fun little video. I'm beat, I'm exhausted, so I'm gonna curl up in my bed and I'm gonna rewatch one of my favorite movies that I've seen in the last few years. It's called The Good Guys, with Russell Crowe and Driver, what's his face, Ryan Gosling, the guy who won't eat his cereal. And if you like movies and you kind of get annoyed by modern comedies, it's a movie I can't recommend enough, because it's a genuinely funny movie that I think was absolutely great the first time I saw it. So I'm going to rewatch that in bed and then try and get some sleep. And then tomorrow I'm off, so I'm going to be making some more serious instructional content for Tekken, and I'd be very happy if you would consider joining me again. Thank you for watching this one. I'll see you guys again very soon.